What is the difference between travel insurance and medical insurance? The easy way to think about this is medical insurance is coverage you'll have available to you when you're at home, and travel insurance is the coverage you're looking to acquire when you're no longer in your home jurisdiction or abroad. So an example for new residents, or people visiting Canada, is that you probably had healthcare at your home country. Now that you come to Canada, as you do not qualify for the government healthcare plan, you would seek to have a private company cover the difference. If you're landed on the path to residency, you'll typically have a 6-month wait period where you'd be looking for a private care company to cover those expenses, and then eventually you'd be picked up by the government health insurance plan. It's not always a hard line, and so it's important to understand when you're covered by the government health insurance plan and cancel your private one so that there isn't a gap. Why should newcomers purchase travel insurance? As mentioned before, one of the most important things to understand about coming to Canada is that our healthcare is not free. In order to have government paid insurance, you must qualify, and typically anyone who's recently landed or visiting Canada, you do not qualify, meaning in order to seek medical coverage, you'd be expected to pay for those out of pocket. So the most important reason for buying this coverage is to make sure that you're not hit with financial hardship because of something you couldn't control, like an illness or an injury. Before we start talking about medical health insurance, overview of the Canadian healthcare system and why it's important for our audience to understand how it works so that they can put private travel medical health insurance in context. One of the things to understand about healthcare in Canada is that it's not free. Every hospital and practitioner has their own requirements of what their bills are, and they are paid by the government-run insurance plan. What this means is anyone who's covered under the government health insurance plan is just seeing their bills pushed directly to that government-run insurance plan and paid for by them. Typically, anyone who is a resident of the province has access to the government health insurance plan, and so we don't even see the bills that are being processed and paid for on our behalf. This often promotes a myth that healthcare in Canada is free, but that's not the case. Anyone who is not eligible for that government health insurance plan, so someone who's not a resident or is visiting the province, would receive these bills to cover out of their own pocket, and in some cases asked to pay up front. So to put that into perspective, just a visit to a general practitioner's office for a sore throat or prescription referral is typically $40 plus the cost of any medications. To be seen in an emergency medical department, we see the average cost in Ontario to be $400 just to visit. So these are not small, maybe not huge expenses, but just to seek regular care that you would expect at home in Canada does cost money. Now, purchasing a private healthcare plan means that you're going to most likely either pay out of pocket and be reimbursed, or in some cases, those hospitals or practitioners will have direct billing with the insurance carriers. Something to consider is that not all aspects of the Canadian healthcare system are even covered by the Canadian health insurance plans. And so you will also see some employers in Canada offer additional coverages so that there would be privately held companies that top up what would be provided by in the government health insurance plan. When you're a visitor, you're typically paying one plan that would cover all those benefits. And so you may see some of them be using the terms emergency or terms for elective. And it's important to understand the difference. Emergency typically means sudden and unexpected, whereas elective is something that you've usually received a script for from a doctor, but it's something that you were seeking. So it's very important to understand that difference. Travel medical health insurance has many different names. What should newcomers be looking for? The most common term you'll see for coverage for people visiting Canada is simply that, visitors to Canada coverage. You will also see some of it as new resident or landed immigrant. Typically, though, all of those will be different subcategories of just visitors to Canada. When you're on the Xodus website, you will see we specifically call out as visitors to Canada coverage, as it's a different process than maybe Canadians leaving the country. But we do ask in the quote process, what is your specific situation, just to make sure we understand the requirements that you'll be looking to seek in your product. When should newcomers purchase medical insurance? The most important time to purchase your travel insurance is before you depart for Canada. It's also important to note that there are certain visa applications to come to Canada that require proof of travel insurance before you have approved for that visa. It is important to note that the Xodus Visitors to Canada product does allow you to purchase coverage after arriving in Canada, so already being here, but there is a 48-hour window waiting period that is applied for any type of illness. Accident and injury would already be covered as soon as you have coverage, but the waiting period here is just to make sure that you aren't purchasing coverage when you know you're already sick. Who should purchase medical insurance? Anyone who is coming to Canada who is not eligible for their government health insurance plan should purchase coverage. So that would include anyone who is not a Canadian resident, or even a Canadian resident who's been outside the Canadian borders long enough where they're no longer covered by their health insurance plan. Typically, these coverages would be your entire length of journey, be it from a day, a week, or for 2 years in the case of super visas. Most people who are seeking residency in Canada only need to carry private health coverage until either an employer picks up the difference or they've been here for 6 months, have received their application, and are being picked up by their provincial healthcare plan at that time. Who is eligible? In order to qualify for an Xodus Visitors to Canada plan, you just need to be over 30 days of age and under 85 years of age, so 84 and younger. Who is ineligible? So we do have some ineligible requirements for the Xodus Visitors to Canada plan. They do include that you haven't been diagnosed with a terminal illness and given less than 2 years to live. You do not reside in a long-term care or nursing home. You do not require assistance with daily activities of living. You have not had home oxygen provided to you in the last 12 months. You do not have any type of kidney conditions that require dialysis, and you have not had a doctor advise you not to travel. As long as you can answer no to all of those questions, then you're eligible to purchase a policy. What should newcomers look for in a policy? The most important thing to understand is coverage limits matter. So while price may be a driving factor, it is important you note that we see policy limits in Canada as low as $50,000, effectively up to $500,000. $50,000, in my opinion, is wholly insufficient if you're ever in a situation that requires hospitalization for a week or more, which hopefully never happens to you, but if it does, even $100,000 at that point may be insufficient. So while you have to take into your consideration what you can afford and then what you need, we will always recommend minimum $100,000, which is what you can purchase with the Xodus travel. What is unique benefit from Xodus Visitors to Canada's plan? Xodus Visitors to Canada plan has two unique factors in the market. One is that we do allow people to travel outside of Canada and can keep their coverage with them. So an example is if you're here on a student visa and you're looking to spend a day trip shopping in the United States, your coverage would follow you to the United States and wouldn't stop at the Canadian border. Just something to be very aware of is that the coverage that you have in Canada is most likely wholly insufficient for what you need to travel to the US, but it would be there if you need it. Some conditions to understand is that the length of travel matters. The calculation for our policies is whatever half your trip to Canada is minus the day to a maximum 30 days. So an easy example is if you're traveling for 70 days and half of that trip would be 35, we would cover you up to 30 days outside of Canada. Another added benefit that is very unique to Xodus Visitors to Canada is we do have $1,000 written in for interruption coverage. Now, what that means is that while traveling either to Canada or while around in Canada, if there's any event that occurs where you need a hotel room or there's been a delay and there's now a cost to keep traveling, so you're on a layover and now if you want to get on the next flight, you have to pay an extra $300. Those are events that would be covered under a policy that typically requires a whole separate purchase. We think it's a nice added benefit that as soon as you're departing for Canada, you know that you're being taken care of. How do I get a quote from Onlia? You simply just need to click any of the links that are provided by Prepare for Canada to direct you to the Xodus site partner of Onlia in order to quote and purchase that Visitors to Canada coverage. You can also speak to any one of our agents through either our live chat or by giving us a call.